Hey, what's going on, guys? What's happening, YouTube? You guys have tuned into Rules for Rebels, and in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at an article from CNBC, the personal finance section, and it's titled, "The Supreme Court is Likely to Rule That the Biden Student Loan Plan is Illegal, Experts Say. Here's what it means for borrowers." So, lately in a lot of these videos, we've been covering a lot of different topics. In today's video, this is going to be the one story that we're going to focus on, and the one thing that we are going to, sorry, dropped my mic there. The one thing that we are going to be talking about, in circles of people who are into making money online and entrepreneurship and small business, people have very strong feelings about college. Pretty much every entrepreneur YouTuber, every make money online YouTuber has done some type of video covering the topic, is college a scam? Honestly, I think the fact that Joe Biden felt the need to forgive student loans across the board pretty much goes to show that college is a scam. Like, what other business or service does everybody who buys it automatically gets a refund because it's so ineffective? So that's what we're going to be talking about in today's video. I found a lot of biases in this article. We'll see if you guys agree with me or if you guys think the same. Feel free to drop a comment down below. Let's just kind of wrap a little bit before we get into this. So first things first, I think the entire premise of college and the entire system and the way that college is set up is kind of antiquated. I've talked in numerous videos before about my buddy Jared Harlan, who went to a program called Praxis. It's a one-year program. The first 6 months is an intensive internship with a mentor in your industry. The second 6 months, you're getting a job and doing an internship working for a real company. The cost may have gone up because of inflation, but when I was talking to my buddy who was going through the program, and I actually did an interview with him. The interview was about copywriting, though I think we did touch a little bit on Praxis. I'd actually interviewed him once about Praxis, and I don't think I ever actually released the video. I'll have to see if I can find that one. But basically the program, I think, cost 11, 12, 13 grand. Because you're working for the second 6 months of the internship, you're actually earning money. So you're basically coming out of the program debt-free. And then you're guaranteed a job making, I believe it's $50K a year. Leaps and bounds better than college. You're not wasting 4 years of your life. You're only spending 1 year of your life, and only 6 months of that is just education. The rest is actual an internship and training in a real world job. They are kind of limited in what you can go for. I believe the areas of study were like sales, copywriting, marketing, and there may have been one like computer programming or something like that. But we're starting to see a lot more programs like that, basically like certificate programs for kind of white collar or office jobs. We're also hearing from a lot of companies that they don't want somebody to go to college for 4 years and then be done and kind of never keep up with their career or their industry. A lot of companies, Fortune 500 companies, large employers are saying, we would prefer kind of continuous education throughout your career to keep people kind of up to speed on new technologies and new developments in their industry. And a lot of companies are starting to roll out their own training programs. So they don't really care about your background or your education. They'll train you how they want you trained. As far as the whole student loan forgiveness thing goes, I think it's a bad policy. Not only do I think it's unconstitutional, I think it's kind of unfair that people who weren't privileged enough to go to college, or people who made a smarter decision rather than getting a worthless degree and going to the University of Arizona just because they have a nice swimming pool and hot college girls with big titties, they decided to go to trade school and get into HVAC or be a plumber or whatever else. Student loan forgiveness is overwhelmingly going to benefit wealthy people from wealthy families. It's also kind of unfair to I think most people that, again, somebody who wasn't fortunate enough to go to college, or somebody who took a more frugal route and got an HVAC certification, or became an apprentice plumber, electrician, or something like that. Why are they paying off the student loan debt of a guy who became a dentist or an orthodontist or a lawyer or an accountant? It just doesn't seem right. If we're going to hand out free money, let's pay off the medical debt of everybody who's had cancer. Let's buy free insulin for everybody who has diabetes, right? People who chose to go to college made a choice to go to college. People don't choose to get sick. People don't choose to get cancer. People don't choose to get diabetes. Actually, some people's lifestyle choices and behaviors actually do cause them to get diabetes. But you guys get the point, right? I would be much more willing to give my tax dollars to pay off somebody's cancer treatments or insulin than I would to pay off somebody's student loan debt. Also, the student loan forgiveness plan doesn't actually solve the problem, right? Like, you basically give people some money. It's not enough money to pay off all their debt. It's really not even going to make a dent for many, many people. And the problem begins over tomorrow, right? There's a systematic problem in, how much colleges are charging. And colleges are going to charge however much they can get away with charging. If loans weren't part of the equation, I guarantee you that college would basically cost an amount to where people could actually pay their way through, or maybe work for a year after college, work for a year or two after high school, save up enough money for college, and then pay it off. The only reason college costs as much as it does is because the colleges know that students can get loans for tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars, and they're going to charge as much as they can. And when students are getting big loans that are backed by the government, well, of course, people are going to be able to pay as much money as they want. So me personally, full disclosure, I am against student loan forgiveness. But let's hop into this article. CNBC, Supreme Court likely to rule that the Biden student loan plan is illegal. Experts say, here's what that means for borrowers. Now, again, I might be okay with this if it actually went through Congress and went through the Senate like things are supposed to. Biden signed this with an executive order, and it was kind of funny. I'm not sure if he was senile and didn't really remember how it went down, or if he was intentionally trying to mislead people and kind of gaslight people. But several times after Biden signed this executive order, he made comments talking about how he was, I'm helping out the American people. I got student loan forgiveness passed. It just squeaked by a couple of votes. It didn't squeak by a couple of votes because it was never voted on in the first place. You sign an executive order because we don't have a functioning government. So if you want to make this happen, make it go through the proper channels. I mentioned this in a video the other day, but a big part of the reason that, or a big thing that gets brought up a lot with student loan forgiveness is, well, it's not fair that all these business owners got PPP loans and they don't have to pay them back. And then these are the same people saying you should have to pay back student loans. Fair criticism in some ways, but again, PPP loans, they wound up being passed through Congress, so they went through the proper channels, and that's why those are legal and student loan forgiveness is illegal. Key points from this article: the Supreme Court will decide whether or not the president's debt relief policy causes harm to the plaintiffs or is an overreach of executive authority. And if you look at kind of Biden's track record, right, like vaccine mandates, eviction moratoriums, a number of other things, he doesn't actually work with people of both parties and work with Congress and work with the Senate to get things passed and improve the country. He just wants to use his pen and sign executive orders. And I don't mean to single him out and criticize him because, Trump and Bush and Obama were the same way, but it's worth mentioning nonetheless. Legal experts say the Supreme Court is likely to end the forgiveness plan given its conservative majority, right? There's kind of a slant right here. If you want to point out, if you think the court is biased, fine, say that. But, there's a legitimate argument to be made that this is unconstitutional and it didn't go through Congress, so it's not legal. But this article wants to say, oh, well, the only reason it's illegal is because the court has a conservative majority. And in a third point, long before the president acted, Republicans had criticized student loan forgiveness as a handout to well-off college graduates. They also argued the president didn't have the power to forgive consumer debt on his own without authorization from Congress. Excuse me. Let's see here. The fate of the Biden administration's sweeping student loan forgiveness plan now rests with the Supreme Court. That may be bad news for borrowers, say the legal and higher education experts. The court's conservatives have been very aggressive in striking down the decisions of Congress and the president, said Gregory Caldera, a political science professor at Ohio State University. I would not be surprised if the court invalidated the executive order. Now, I don't mean to jump ahead, but later in this thing, they basically make a comment that the Supreme Court normally rules with what the majority of the American people want. That's not the Supreme Court's job. The Supreme Court is not meant to cement popular opinion. The Supreme Court is meant to look at things from a constitutional perspective and do what's constitutional, right? It doesn't matter what the American people want. It's about following the Constitution. The U.S. Supreme Court is more than likely is more likely than not to block the president's student loan forgiveness plan, Karowitz said. The highest court decided to take the case after the U.S. Department of Justice filed an emergency application asking the justices to lift the injunction on its forgiveness plan that had been issued by U.S. Court of Appeals for the Eighth Circuit in St. Louis at the request of 6 GOP-led states. And one other thing to kind of point out, a big part of the reason why student loans are in the situation they are is because of Joe Biden. Joe Biden was a big part of making student loans not dischargeable in bankruptcy, the only type of loan or debt that can't be discharged in bankruptcy. And now he wants to kind of swoop in and play the hero here. And here's something interesting. I've heard some people say, well, what if we just made student loans dischargeable in bankruptcy like other types of debt? I actually don't think that's a terrible idea. Here's why a lot of people say that's a terrible idea. Well, if I can go to become a dentist or an orthodontist or some high-paying job, I can take on a couple $100,000 worth of student loan debt when I'm 18 years old or in my early 20s. Once I get my education, I can file for bankruptcy. My credit's fucked for the next 7 years, but I can work as a dentist for the next 6 or 7 years, stockpile a shitload of money, and then once that bankruptcy is off my record and I can get credit again, I go buy a bunch of equipment, I open my own office, and I essentially became a dentist or lawyer or orthodontist, you fill in the blank, pretty much completely free and didn't have to pay my student loan debt back. So I get that, right? That's a legitimate argument. However, the one reason I do think that might be a decent idea is it's not as if banks and private lenders won't loan anything to students. Obviously, students, when you go to college, there's no guarantee that you're going to get a good career or make money or be able to pay back that loan. But I do feel like banks and private lenders would loan smaller amounts of money. They may not give you $150,000, but they'd probably give you $5,000 or $10,000. And like I kind of alluded to at the beginning of this video, I think college is going to cost as much as people are willing to pay for it. So if people can only get loans maxing out at about 15 grand, college is going to wind up costing $3 or $4 grand a year. If people can get loans maxing out at 200 grand, well, then college is going to max out. Then colleges are going to wind up charging 50 grand a year. But I think that would kind of solve the problem of bringing down the cost of a college education, because either banks would only lend so much, or you could only charge as much as a middle-class family can pay, or as much as a student could earn and kind of pay off their college as they're going through, working a retail job or some other kind of normal job. The justices who will decide whether or not the president's debt relief policy causes harm to the plaintiff or is an overreach of executive authority said they would hear oral arguments in February. So apparently this should be resolved, sometime in February or however long the case takes to be seen by the Supreme Court. The ruling will settle, in quotes, for now, student loan challenges. In August, President Joe Biden announced that the U.S. Department of Education would deliver student loan forgiveness of up to $20,000 for tens of millions of Americans. The nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office estimates the plan would cost around $400 billion. Long before the president acted, Republicans had criticized student loan forgiveness as a handout to well-off graduates. They also argued the president didn't have the power to forgive consumer debt on his own without authorization from Congress. Now, just make it go through Congress, right? Don't just make this happen with an executive order. Unsurprisingly, the legal challenges poured in. At least 6 lawsuits have been brought against the president's plan. The administration closed its portal where borrowers could apply for the relief last month, although 26 million people had already requested it. The benefit of the Supreme Court ruling is that it will settle for now all the litigation related to the loan forgiveness, said Dan Ehrman, a law professor at Northeastern University. Why the Supreme Court may block forgiveness? For a number of reasons, Ehrman predicts, the Supreme Court will rule against Biden. He said the conservative justices believe the government agencies exert too much authority and violate the separation of powers. In addition, he said the concept of loan forgiveness seems to run counter to their notions of individual responsibility. Such a politically fueled decision, however, is likely to further damage the public's perception of the Supreme Court. And again, they're kind of placing their, this should be kind of unbiased reporting. They're basically saying, Supreme Court, if you wind up doing this, because you think it's constitutional, you're going to damage your reputation with the Supreme Court. Striking down forgiveness will add to the growing skepticism that the conservative justices vote for conservatives and the liberal justices vote for liberals, Ehrman said. Just 25% of Americans have confidence in the highest court, a Gallup poll found over the summer. If the president's plan is blocked, he added, it will be another example, along with abortion and guns, of the court taking positions that a majority of Americans oppose. Well, again, the Supreme Court's job is not to push forward or make decisions based on what's popular with the American people. They're meant to uphold the Constitution. In a poll conducted by The Economist and YouGov in August, 51% of respondents said they support Biden's loan relief plan. Around 40% oppose the initiative. Now, here's kind of another interesting thing, and here's kind of why our country is so fucked. We live in a country where it's me, me, me. I want handouts. I want free stuff. And the disparity in wages and wealth and possessions between the haves and the have-nots, the 1% and the rest of us, as this grows, more and more people are going to want free shit. So, to his credit, Bill Clinton was the closest president in modern history, if not ever, to actually balance the budget. And something worth pointing out, Bill Clinton didn't do this on his own. He was a good negotiator, and he was good at working with the other side, working with other parties. And so, the team of Bill Clinton and Newt Gingrich were actually able to to kind of get the country on the right track. Well, obviously, there's no partnership, there's no no working together in this day and age between Republicans and Democrats. Sorry, I'm having kind of a brain fart. Let's see, where were we? 51%. Oh, here's where I was going with this. So basically, everybody wants free shit and everybody wants handouts. Now, it would take somebody like Bill Clinton, it would take a team like Bill Clinton and Newt Gingrich to actually kind of get serious about kind of getting our debt under control, paying off our debt, kind of doing all these types of things, getting our country in a better position. But somebody like that will never get elected because that person is like the responsible parent. But then you have other politicians out there who are free this, free that, $2,000 checks for all of you, UBI, this, that, and the other. Well, one politician is the fun parent giving you ice cream for dinner and cake for breakfast, and the other politician is the one who's telling you to eat your broccoli. Who do you think's going to wind up getting the votes? And that's why this country will never get our debt paid down, and why the country is going to continue to devolve into degeneracy. In the past, the Supreme Court, okay, so here's the line. In the past, the Supreme Court usually ruled in line with public opinion, Ehrman said. Now, if public opinion was in line with what's constitutional, that's completely fine. But again, it is not the Supreme Court's job to cement what popular public opinion is. Arguments over the limit of presidential power beyond the popularity of its debt relief plan, the Biden administration insists that it's acting within the law, pointing out that the HEROES Act of 2003 grants the education secretary the authority to waive regulations related to student loans during national emergencies. The U.S. has been operating under an emergency declaration since March of 2020. Now, I think Biden already declared that COVID was no longer an emergency, yet he's still pushing forward like $10 billion of COVID emergency funding. So it's kind of unclear whether we're in an emergency or not. However, lawyers for the GOP-led states argue that the administration should not be able to use the public health crisis to issue such sweeping policy. And we have seen that people have used the Mexican beer cough to push through all types of things that would normally be unconstitutional, such as not allowing landlords to collect rent, forcing employers to make their employees get vaccinations. The Constitution went out the window when COVID came on the scene. The administration is once again invoking the COVID-19 pandemic to assert power far beyond anything Congress would have conceived. The lawyers wrote in a brief to justices, pointing out that the highest court previously stopped the White House's nationwide ban on evictions. Yet a group of borrower advocacy groups in a recent brief to the U.S. Supreme Court said student debt forgiveness was essential to the country's recovery from the pandemic. The public health crisis exacerbated the financial difficulties for borrowers who have for decades been at the mercy of a broken student loan system. Now, what is handing everybody $10,000 due to fix what they admit is a broken system in the first place? Without cancellation, they warned, working and middle-class borrowers are at substantial risk of default. So that's the end of the article. What do you guys think about this? I guess I should ask this in a couple ways. What are your personal feelings about student loan forgiveness? Like, do you agree with it? Do you not agree with it? If you have student loans and you said I would, and your kind of attitude is I would love to see them wiped away. Sure, I'd like to be given $10,000 or $20,000. I mean, honestly, I can't fault you for that. But be honest. Say I have student loans, and I would love to see them wiped out. But also beyond what benefits you or beyond what your personal opinion is, do you think it's right that Biden, with the stroke of a pen, should be able to wipe away $10,000 or $20,000 worth of student loan debt? And I guess secondly, do you see it as being constitutional? As always, I would love to hear your thoughts, comments, opinions. So go ahead and drop a comment down below. If you guys enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed to the channel, click that subscribe button down below and ring the bell. And as always, thank you guys for watching, and I will catch you on the next video.